Let me tell you something before I start. If you're ever driving alone at night and you see a car pulled over on the side of an empty road, don't slow down. Don't look too long. Just keep driving. I wish somebody had told me that before October 29th. Maybe I would have listened. Maybe not. But I want you to hear this from someone it actually happened to. Not some story you read online. My name's Daniel. I'm 32. I live in a small town in the Midwest. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody. And the roads outside of town go dark the second the sun goes down. No streetlights out there. Just corn. Miles and miles of corn. That night I was coming home late from work. Closing shift. Exhausted. Running on gas station coffee. There's a shortcut I always take. A 2-lane road that cuts straight through the Miller farm. Corn on both sides. Tall enough that you can't see past the first few rows. I've driven that road 1,000 times. Never thought twice about it. It was around 11:40 p.m. when I saw the truck. An old pickup, parked crooked on the shoulder, half in the ditch, headlights off. No hazards, no driver standing next to it, nobody waving for help, just sitting there in the dark like it had been left in a hurry. My first thought was, farmer trouble. Maybe he broke down checking on something in the field. Maybe his battery died. Small towns. You don't really think twice about stuff like that. You think about helping, not about danger. So I eased off the gas a little, just to get a better look as I passed. That's when I noticed the corn. The stalks closest to the road were moving, not swaying, moving, like something was pushing through them low to the ground. There was no wind that night. I remember that clearly, because the air was dead still, not even a breeze. I told myself it was an animal, a deer, a raccoon, something. I kept driving. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced down. Unknown number. 1 line of text. No name, no context. Don't stop. He's still in the field. I actually laughed. First thought, somebody's messing with me. One of my buddies, maybe. Trying to freak me out since Halloween was coming up. I typed back, "Who is this?" Didn't even hit send yet. Then I looked up into the rear view mirror. And that's when the night stopped being a joke. I want to be honest with you for a second. I just stared at that mirror like my brain refused to process it. There was someone standing between the corn rows. Not walking, not waving, just standing there, maybe 30 yards back from the road, facing the direction I'd driven from, facing my car. I didn't stop. I want to be clear about that, because everyone always asks, why didn't you just pull over and check? No. Every instinct in my body said drive. So I did. Foot easing down on the gas, watching that shape in the mirror get smaller and smaller until the road curved and I lost sight of it completely. I told myself I was imagining things. A scarecrow. Maybe. Some post the farmer put up. My hands were shaking on the wheel, and I was trying so hard to explain it away. I called my buddy Mark. He lives out that way. Has for years. Knows every back road and every family name attached to every farm. I just needed to hear a normal voice. He picked up on the second ring. I told him where I was. Told him about the truck, the movement in the corn. I didn't even get to the text message before he cut me off. "Wait, are you at the Miller field right now?" I said, "Yeah." There was a pause, a real pause. The kind that makes your stomach drop before anyone says a word. "Don't get out of the car, man." I asked him why, half laughing, trying to keep my voice light even though my chest had gone tight. He wasn't laughing. He told me that a few weeks back. A man from 3 towns over went missing right there, right on that stretch. His truck was found pulled over on the shoulder, engine off. Nothing wrong with it mechanically, no signs of a struggle, no note. The guy himself gone. Search parties went through that cornfield for 4 days straight and found nothing. Not a shoe, not a wallet, nothing. I remember going quiet on the phone, because I was looking at the pickup in my own rearview mirror as he said it. Old, faded red, dent in the tailgate. I asked Mark if he remembered what the missing man's truck looked like. He said the sheriff's department had put up flyers around town with a photo of it. I told him I'd call him back. I didn't hang up because I wanted to. I hung up because my hands wouldn't stop shaking and I needed both of them on the wheel. First thing I did was hit the lock button. All 4 doors. That heavy click echoing through the cab like it was supposed to mean something. Like a door lock could stop whatever was out there. I grabbed my phone to call the police. 1 bar. 1 single bar of signal flickering in and out. And every time I hit call, it just sat there. Spinning, spinning, then dropping. That's when I heard it. A knock. Soft. 2 taps against the back window, right behind my head. I spun around so fast I nearly threw my back out. Nothing there. Empty backseat. Empty road behind me through the rear glass. Nothing. I looked out toward the field instead, my heart slamming against my ribs. The figure I'd seen before was gone. But the corn wasn't still. 1 row, then the next. Bending down in a straight line, low and steady, like something was moving through it on its hands and knees, getting closer to the road. I turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. Dead. I tried again. Same thing. The dashboard lights were on. The radio still worked, but the engine wouldn't turn over. Like something had reached in and just switched it off. My phone buzzed again in my lap. He knows you're looking at him. I looked up. There was a man standing in the middle of the road. Not 30 yards back this time, maybe 30 feet, close enough that I could make out the shape of an old work jacket. Dark, worn at the shoulders. He wasn't moving. He wasn't doing anything at all. Just standing there in my headlights like he'd always been standing there. I laid on the horn, long, hard, both hands pressed into the wheel. He didn't flinch, didn't blink that I could see. Nothing. And then, from somewhere behind me inside the cab, I swear to you, inside the cab a voice, quiet, almost gentle. You shouldn't have stopped. I whipped around so fast my neck cracked. Nobody there. Back seat empty, front seat empty. Just me, alone, in a car that wouldn't start. On a road with a dead man's truck 20 feet behind me and a stranger standing in my headlights. But the back right door, the one I know I locked, the one I heard click, was open. Just an inch. Just enough. That was it. That was the moment I stopped thinking about explanations and started thinking about survival. I grabbed my phone, flipped on the flashlight, and shoved my shoulder into the driver's door. I didn't look at the man in the road. I didn't look at the corn. I just ran, not toward the field, not back the way the truck had come from, but straight down the road, toward town, toward anywhere with light, behind me. Footsteps, not running. That was the worst part. Not chasing, not sprinting to catch up, just walking, steady, even. Like whoever it was knew exactly how this was going to end and wasn't in any hurry to get there. I didn't turn around. Every part of me wanted to look, and every part of me knew that looking back was how you lose. Up ahead, maybe a quarter mile, I saw it the glow of a gas station sign. Still open. Lights buzzing over an empty lot. I ran harder than I've ever run in my life. Headlights swung around the bend behind me. A truck. A real one. Coming down the road. I stumbled into the middle of the lane, waving both arms over my head like a lunatic. It stopped. The driver, some older guy, thank God, hauling equipment in the bed, leaned across and shoved the passenger door open, pulled me in by the arm, and locked it the second I was inside. I twisted around in the seat, looking back down the road toward the field. There was nothing there. No man, no footsteps, no corn moving. Just an empty road, like none of it had ever happened at all. The police showed up about 20 minutes later. I gave them everything: the truck, the man in the road, the voice, all of it, probably sounding half out of my mind the whole time. They walked back with me to where I'd left my car. It started on the first try. They searched the inside anyway. No sign of forced entry, no broken locks. Nothing to say anyone had been in there with me, except for one thing. Under the back seat, the same seat that door had cracked open. From there was a phone, not mine, scratched up. Battery still somehow alive. One of the officers turned it on right there in front of me. Photos. Dozens of them. All taken at night. All from roughly the same angle, looking out across that stretch of road by the Miller field. Camera aimed at whatever vehicle happened to be pulled over or slowing down at that spot. Different cars, different trucks, different nights. Going back what looked like months. The last photo in the gallery was time-stamped 4 minutes before I ever saw that pickup on the shoulder. It was my car, parked exactly where I would park it. From an angle I never would have expected anyone to be standing at. Taken before I had even arrived. The police searched the field at first light. They found footprints, deep ones, pressed into the soft dirt between the corn rows, leading from somewhere deep in the field out toward the shoulder of the road. Only one direction. Nobody could find a single print heading back in. The man who'd gone missing weeks before was never found. Not that day. Not the weeks after. Not ever. As far as I know. And the old red pickup, the one parked crooked on the shoulder. The one that matched the photo on the missing persons flyer. It was gone before the officers even finished walking the field. Nobody saw it leave. Nobody heard an engine. I don't take that road anymore. Not at night. Barely even in daylight. I still drive near it sometimes, when I have to. But I never look into the corn anymore. Because the last time I did, I saw someone standing there. And I'm almost certain he was standing exactly where I had been standing 5 minutes earlier. If there's one thing I've learned from that night, it's this: curiosity doesn't just get you killed. Sometimes it gets you watched, long before you ever knew you were being hunted. So if you're ever driving alone, late, past some empty stretch of road, and you see something out of place, a car, a light, a shape that doesn't belong, don't slow down to look closer. Don't feed whatever's out there your attention. Just keep your eyes on the road ahead of you. Because some things in the dark aren't waiting to be found. They're waiting for you to notice them first. Before I tell you this, I need you to promise me something. If you ever find a door unlocked in a place that's supposed to be empty, don't take it as an invitation. Take it as a warning. I didn't understand that until it was almost too late. My name's Claire. I'm 20. And this happened at a house that wasn't supposed to have anyone in it at all. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside the abandoned house wasn't the smell or the darkness. It was the fact that someone had left a fresh cup of coffee on the kitchen table, steam still rising off it. Let me back up. I'm into urban exploration photography, mostly. Abandoned places. The kind of thing you post online for likes and nobody thinks twice about. My friend Beth and I had been talking about this house for weeks. It sat at the end of a dirt road outside town, half swallowed by trees, windows boarded, roof caving in on one side. Nobody had lived there in years. Everyone said so. The county records even listed it as vacant, tax delinquent, forgotten. We went out on a Friday evening, right as the light was turning gold and long. Beth had her tripod. I had my camera, and we were both laughing about how creepy the place looked from the road, daring each other to go first. The front door wasn't locked. It wasn't even fully shut, just resting against the frame, like someone had pulled it closed without latching it. We took that as a good sign. Easy access, good shots, home before dark. We split up almost immediately. Beth wanted the upstairs for the light coming through the broken windows. I wanted the kitchen old wallpaper. A table still set with dusty plates. That kind of decayed in time aesthetic that does really well online. That's when I saw the coffee cup. White ceramic, chipped on the handle, sitting square in the middle of the table like someone had just stepped away from it. Steam curling up into the stale air. I remember standing there a long moment. Camera halfway to my eye, telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe a homeless person passing through. Maybe kids messing around, trying to freak out exactly the kind of people who come poking through houses like this. I called out for Beth. No answer. I told myself she probably just couldn't hear me from upstairs. I picked up my camera and took the shot anyway. I moved through the kitchen slower after that, more careful, listening for footsteps overhead, for Beth's voice. for anything. The house creaked the way old houses do, settling, whined through broken glass, nothing I could point to and call wrong. But the little things kept adding up. In the hallway, there was a blanket draped over the back of a rotted armchair. I almost walked past it, except it didn't look decades old like everything else in that room. It looked recently used, folded in a way dust doesn't fold itself. I touched it before I could stop myself. Warm. Not blazing warm, just not cold. The way everything else in that house was cold. Body warm, like someone had been sitting under it minutes before. I told myself it was residual heat from the evening sun coming through a window. I told myself a lot of things that night. Further down the hall, near the base of the stairs, there was a phone charging, plugged into a wall outlet that, by every account, shouldn't have had working power. The little battery icon blinked. Steady. Climbing. I stood there staring at it for a long time. There was no reason for that outlet to have power, no reason for a phone to be charging in an abandoned house at the end of a dirt road that nobody, according to everyone I'd ever talked to, had lived in for years. I called for Beth again, louder this time. My voice cracked a little on her name. Nothing. I told myself she had her earbuds in. She always had her earbuds in when she was setting up a shot, tuning out the world to get the framing right. That was Beth. That wasn't anything to worry about. Near the bottom of the staircase, in a thin patch of dust, undisturbed by decades of neglect, I saw footprints. Fresh ones. Shoe prints. Not boots. Not work shoes, sneakers. My size. Maybe a little smaller. Tracking in from somewhere near the back of the house and heading up the stairs. I remember crouching down and staring at them for way too long. My brain doing that thing where it tries every explanation except the one staring you in the face. Maybe they were mine. I checked my own shoes. They didn't match. I decided that was enough. Whatever I'd wandered into. Whatever explanation there was for warm blankets and charging phones and footprints that weren't mine. I didn't need to be the one to figure it out. I needed Beth. And then I needed to be back in my car. I climbed the stairs, calling her name every few steps, my voice sounding thinner each time. The upstairs hallway was worse than the kitchen. Doors hanging half off their hinges, wallpaper peeling in long curls. That particular kind of silence that isn't really silence. It's a held breath. I checked room after room. Her tripod was set up in the second bedroom, angled toward the window. Camera still mounted. No Beth. I called her name into that empty room and my own voice came back at me off the bare walls. That's when I heard it. Not from where I was standing, from below me. The soft, deliberate creak of a floorboard in the kitchen I'd just left. One step, then a pause, then another. I went completely still. I told myself it was Beth. That she'd come back down looking for me while I was coming up looking for her. That we'd just missed each other in some stupid comedy of errors. I opened my mouth to call out again, and something stopped me. I don't know what. Instinct, maybe. Some part of my brain that had been quietly cataloging all those small wrong details, finally raising its hand and saying, "Don't." I stood in that doorway and listened to footsteps that weren't Beth's rhythm, weren't her weight, moving unhurried across the kitchen floor below me. Then they stopped, and a floorboard on the staircase creaked, the one I'd just come up. I backed into the bedroom, my heart slamming so hard I could feel it in my throat, and I eased the door shut behind me without letting the latch click. Through the crack, I watched the hallway. Nothing came, not right away, just the sound of that unhurried tread, moving from room to room down the hall, pausing outside each door a beat too long before moving to the next, getting closer to mine. I looked around the room for anywhere to go, and that's when I saw it wasn't empty like the others. There was a mattress in the corner, a lantern, a stack of folded clothes. Someone had been living here. I pressed myself into the space behind an old dresser. Camera clutched against my chest so tight, the strap dug into my neck. Through the crack in the door, I watched the hallway light shift as the footsteps drew even with my room. They stopped. I stopped breathing. For 3, 4, 5 seconds. Nothing happened. No movement, no sound. Just that terrible stillness of someone standing on the other side of a door, deciding. Then the footsteps moved on, down the hall, toward the far bedroom. I didn't move for a long time after that. When I finally did, it was to try the door I'd come, easing it open an inch at a time, terrified of every creak. The hallway was empty. I made it to the top of the stairs before I remembered Beth. I still hadn't found her. I almost called out again. And then I thought of that unhurried tread moving room to room. And I thought better of it. I went down instead, as quiet as I could manage, telling myself I just needed to get outside, get to the car, and call for help from somewhere that wasn't this house. The front door was closed. I remembered leaving it resting open against the frame, the way we'd found it. I put my hand on the knob and turned. It didn't move. Locked. From the outside. I stood there rattling it. Quiet at first, then not so quiet. My breath coming in short, useless bursts. I checked the windows near the door. Boarded from the inside. Nailed shut. The kind of boards that hadn't been disturbed in years, except one, near the back. That looked different. Newer wood. Recently placed. That's when I heard it. Footsteps again. Upstairs. Moving now, not the slow, deliberate pace from before. Faster. Coming toward the stairs. I didn't think. I just moved. Back down the hall past the kitchen. Past that cold cup of coffee still sitting untouched on the table. Into a small room off to the side that looked like it used to be a pantry or a mudroom. I pulled the door shut behind me. No lock. Nothing but a broken latch hanging useless. And pressed myself into the corner behind a stack of rotted boxes. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. They didn't rush. That was the thing I couldn't get past even now. Hunting through his own house for someone he knew was trapped inside it. He didn't hurry. Like he had all the time he needed. Like he already knew how this went. I held my breath and turned my head, just slightly, toward the wall behind me. And that's when I saw the photographs. Dozens of them, pinned up in uneven rows across the plaster people I didn't recognize. Most caught in candid shots. Walking up the dirt road toward the house, standing in the front yard, peering through windows. Some of the photos were old, yellowed at the edges. Others looked recent. I made myself keep looking, even though every part of me wanted to look away. Near the bottom row, there was a photo of Beth, taken from an upstairs window, looking down at her setting up her tripod in the yard. Maybe 20 minutes before we'd even gone inside. And next to it, there was a photo of me, walking up the dirt road, camera bag over my shoulder, taken from an angle at the tree line, from somewhere I never would have thought to look, before I'd ever set foot near that house. The footsteps outside the pantry door slowed. I made myself stop staring at that photo of me and think. Actually think. Because falling apart in that corner was going to get me killed. I forced my breathing down to something quiet and even. And I made myself take stock of what I had. My phone, fully charged. Useless, no signal out here. I'd checked twice already back in the kitchen. My camera. And, somewhere past that door, a house I'd now seen most of, including one detail that might matter more than anything else. Near the kitchen, tucked beside the pantry I was hiding in. There had been a door I'd barely noticed on my way past. Low, narrow, a rusted bolt across it, a basement door. Everything in me said that was where he'd come from. That was where all of this, the mattress, the lantern, the photographs had started. And every horror movie I'd ever half-watched through my fingers told me the one thing you never do is go down into the basement. So I didn't. The footsteps outside the door had stopped moving entirely now. And that stillness was somehow worse than the sound. I pictured him standing just on the other side, listening the same way I was listening. And the idea of two people frozen in silence on either side of a broken latch made my skin crawl in a way I still can't fully describe. I thought about the back window I'd seen from Beth's room upstairs, the one that wasn't boarded, half broken already, looking out onto the tree line behind the house. If I could get back up there, if I could get through it before he reached me. I needed a distraction. My phone was still in my pocket, Screen dark, battery full and utterly useless out here. But it didn't need signal to make noise. I set it to vibrate off, screen brightness all the way up. And I waited until the stillness outside the door stretched long enough that I couldn't stand it anymore. Then I eased the pantry door open a crack, just enough to see the empty hallway. And I threw my phone as hard and as far as I could toward the base of the staircase. It clattered against the wood, loud, skittering across the floor, its screen glowing bright in the dark hallway. Footsteps, fast now, moving toward the sound. I didn't wait to see if it worked. I slipped out of the pantry the second the hallway cleared and ran, silent as I could manage, toward the stairs on the opposite side of the house. I took the stairs 2 at a time. No light, no sound, except my own ragged breathing and the blood pounding in my ears. Behind me, somewhere near the front of the house, I heard him realize the phone wasn't me. A pause, then footsteps again, faster, angrier, no longer bothering to be quiet. I reached the upstairs hallway and threw myself into Beth's room, the one with her tripod still standing untouched by the window. And I didn't stop to think about what that meant, where she actually was, whether she was even still in this house at all. I couldn't think about that. Not yet. The window was exactly as broken as I remembered, one pane shattered. The rest of the frame swollen shut with years of damp and rot. I grabbed the tripod, swung it hard into the remaining glass, and the whole thing gave way in a shower of noise that felt like it could be heard for miles. Footsteps hit the stairs behind me. I didn't look back. I braced both hands on the sill, glass biting into my palms, and hauled myself through, dropping hard onto the sloped roof of the porch below. Pain shot up through my ankle on landing, but I didn't stop, sliding down the shingles and half falling into the overgrown yard. The tree line dark and close ahead of me. I heard him at the window above, heard the frame groan under weight it wasn't built for. I ran. Branches tore at my arms, my legs, the dirt road nowhere in sight. Just trees and dark and my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. I didn't know if he was behind me. I didn't stop to check. Every horror movie logic I'd ever half-mocked came rushing back. Don't look back. Don't slow down. Don't stop until there's light. And then, ahead of me, headlights, the main road, cutting through the trees maybe 50 yards off, a car moving slow along the 2-lane stretch. I burst out of the tree line, waving both arms, screaming until my throat tore, and the car swerved, braked hard, stopped. A man leaned across and shoved the door open. I threw myself inside and he locked it before I'd even gotten my legs all the way in, staring past me at the dark tree line like he half expected something to come out of it after me. Nothing did. The police were at the house within the hour. I gave them everything I could get out between shaking breaths, the coffee cup, the warm blanket, the footprints, the locked door, the photographs on the pantry wall, and Beth. I kept asking about Beth, over and over, until an officer finally radioed it in and told me to wait. They found her an hour later, in the trees behind the house, hiding in a drainage ditch half a mile from where I'd gone through the window. She'd heard him coming up the stairs before I had, slipped out through a side door while he was still on the second floor, and spent the whole time I was inside that house, running and hiding in the woods, too afraid to come back for me, too afraid to leave without me. We held on to each other in the back of an ambulance, and neither of us said much of anything for a long time. They searched the house top to bottom. Behind that rusted bolt, down in the basement, they found what he'd actually built down there, a narrow room, walled off from the rest of the foundation, lined with a cot, supplies, and a stack of belongings that didn't belong to any one person. A wallet, a student ID, a woman's jacket. Things that had been reported lost or reported missing. Over what the police later said looked like a span of at least 2 years. But the detail that stayed with the officers longest, the one I heard about weeks later, when they finally sat me down for a follow-up interview, was the security system. He'd rigged the house with cameras, small ones, hidden in the eaves, in the tree line along the dirt road, feeding into a monitor down in that basement room, battery-powered, motion-triggered, recording for months. When they pulled the footage from that night, they found him watching a live feed of the front yard hours before Beth and I ever arrived. Sitting in that basement, watching the tree line, waiting. He'd known we were coming before we did. That should have been the end of it. Horrible. But over a man in custody, a basement full of evidence, a case for the news to run for a week and then forget. I told myself that for a long time. I wanted it to be the end of it. Then, weeks later, a detective called me in one more time. He said they'd gone back through the older camera footage, the archived files going back months before that night, trying to build a timeline of who else had come near that house. Faces, dates, a slow catalog of people who'd wandered up that dirt road out of curiosity and never known they were being watched the whole time. He pulled up one clip in particular, time-stamped just under an hour before Beth and I ever arrived. It showed the front yard, empty, quiet, the light still gold with early evening, and then a figure walked into frame from the tree line. Not him, the man they'd already arrested, was accounted for elsewhere on the footage, moving through the house at that exact same time, visible on a different camera altogether. This was someone else. They stood at the edge of the yard for almost 10 full minutes, motionless, facing the house, before turning and walking back into the trees. No name, no plate on file, nothing on record before or after that single clip. The detective told me they still didn't know who that person was. I think about that more than I think about the man in the basement. Honestly. Him, at least. I understand a sick kind of patience. A house he'd turned into a trap, a routine he'd clearly practiced on more people than just us. That's a horror I can put a shape to. The other figure, I can't. I still take photographs. I still love old places, forgotten places, the kind of quiet that comes from somewhere nobody goes anymore. But I don't go alone now, and I don't go anywhere that isn't confirmed empty by someone other than a rumor and a real estate listing. Because I learned something that night that I don't think I'll ever unlearn. The thing that gets you isn't always what's waiting inside. Sometimes it's what was already watching you from the outside, long before you ever thought to be afraid. If you ever feel that pull towards somewhere you're not supposed to be, an old house, an empty field, a door left open when it shouldn't be, ask yourself why it feels so easy to get in. Some doors aren't left open by accident. Some are left open on purpose, for whoever's curious enough to walk through. The rain hadn't stopped in 4 days. On the 5th night, I found a wet handprint on the inside of my closet door. I want to say that up front. Not because it's the scariest part. It's not by a long way. But it's the part where I still had a chance to leave. And I didn't. So if you're the type who yells at the screen during a horror movie, just leave the house. I want you to remember that before you judge me. I had 4 more weeks in that house after the handprint. I stayed for all of them. My name doesn't matter. I was 30. I'd just moved to Oregon for a job I didn't even want that badly. But it paid well, and it got me out of a relationship I should have left 2 years earlier. The house was a rental, 1 story, out past the edge of town where the suburbs give up and the pine trees take over. Cheap. Too cheap, honestly. And I knew that going in. The landlord said it had some drainage issues. I didn't ask what that meant. I should have. It had been raining since the day I signed the lease. Not dramatic rain, just steady, gray, endless Oregon rain. The kind that doesn't announce itself, just settles into your bones and stays there. By day 4, my backyard had turned into something closer to a swamp. The grass squelched. There was a dip near the back corner of the house where water pooled up almost ankle deep. I didn't think much of it. New house, new state, new rain. Everything felt unfamiliar, so nothing felt wrong yet. The handprint was small. Almost, I want to say, almost delicate. If that doesn't sound insane for something that scared the hell out of me. It was on the inside of my closet door, at about shoulder height, 5 fingers in a palm, still damp when I touched it. My hand went right through the smear. I stood there in my bathrobe at 11 at night, trying to explain it to myself. I told myself it was condensation. Old houses sweat, especially in weather like that. Maybe I'd touched the door myself, hours earlier, after washing my face, and just didn't remember. Maybe the print was mine and my brain was making it look bigger. Stranger. More like a stranger's hand than it actually was. I didn't sleep well that night. But I didn't call anyone either. I didn't take a picture. I actually wiped it off with a paper towel. Like getting rid of the evidence would get rid of the feeling. 2 nights later, I heard the sound under the floor. It was faint. A scrape. Then nothing. I was lying in bed, lights off, listening to the rain hit the roof. And under all of that, so quiet, I almost convinced myself I imagined it a scrape. Like something dragging across dirt. I told myself it was a rat. That's the last normal thought I had about that house. Rats. I decided. That was the story I told myself. And for a while it held up fine. I'd grown up in an old house back east, one with a crawl space just like this one. And I remembered my dad crouched by the vents every fall, setting traps, grumbling about the tenants downstairs. So a scraping sound under the floorboards didn't feel like a 5-alarm event. It felt like home ownership. Well, rentership. Whatever you call it when you're not sure who's responsible for fixing anything. I called the landlord the next morning. He was an older guy, gruff on the phone, the kind of man who answers every complaint like it's a personal insult. Probably rats, he said. Almost word for word what I'd already told myself, which somehow made it less comforting instead of more. Crawl space flooded a little, I bet, with all this rain. They come up looking for dry ground. Should I be worried? Nah. Put some traps down if it bugs you. I'll get someone out there when the weather clears. The weather did not clear. If anything, it got worse. The forecast kept pushing back a break in the rain. Thursday, then Saturday, then sometime next week. And my backyard kept sinking further into itself. That low spot near the corner of the house had become a proper puddle, wide as a kiddie pool. And one morning on my way to my car, I noticed something I hadn't before. A piece of plywood, mostly buried in the mud, right where the yard met the foundation. I don't know why I noticed it that particular morning, and not the ones before. Maybe the water had shifted it. Maybe the ground had sunk another inch overnight, enough to expose the edge. I crouched down, curious in that idle way you are about things that don't feel dangerous yet, and I saw it was a hatch. A crawl space access panel, half swallowed by wet dirt. Grass growing up over one corner like it had been there, undisturbed, for years. I didn't open it. I want to be clear about that, because in every version of this story I've told since. Someone asks if I looked inside. I didn't. I just noted it, the way you note a crack in the sidewalk, and went to work. That night, the sound came back. Not a scrape this time, a soft, rhythmic thump, 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 slow and deliberate, coming from somewhere beneath my bedroom floor. I lay there in the dark, doing that thing you do when you're trying to convince your own body that everything's fine while your heart is going twice its normal speed. Pipes, I told myself. Old houses have loud pipes, water hammer. That's a real thing. I'd heard of it. But pipes don't pause. Pipes don't stop right when you sit up in bed, and start again the second you lie back down. I noticed that. I noticed it, and I let myself unnotice it, because the alternative was getting up, walking through a dark house alone, at midnight, in a place I'd lived in for less than 2 weeks. And I didn't want to be the kind of woman who scared herself over an old house settling in the rain. So I stayed in bed. I put a pillow over my head. Eventually, I fell asleep. By the second week, I'd stopped calling it settling. I want to walk you through it slowly, the way it actually happened. Because that's the part people don't believe, how slow it was, how reasonable every single explanation sounded, right up until it didn't. It started with the floor being warm, not hot, not something is burning, warm, just warm. In a way, hardwood floors in a rainy Oregon house in October have no business being. I noticed it getting out of bed one morning, padding across the room in bare feet. And there was this patch, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, right at the foot of my bed. That felt almost like it had a heating pad under it. I actually laughed a little. I remember that. I laughed. Because my first thought was, oh, maybe there's some old radiant heating system down there that finally kicked on. Some quirk of the house nobody mentioned. I even texted my sister about it. This house has secret heated floors. Fancy. With a laughing emoji. She said something like, nice, at least something's going right for you. We joked about it for a few messages and then moved on to something else entirely. Some show she was watching, and I forgot about it within the hour. The warmth came and went after that. Some mornings the patch was there. Some mornings it wasn't. I started to notice a pattern I didn't want to admit. I was noticing it was warmest on the mornings after I'd slept the deepest. The mornings I hadn't woken up at 3 a.m. to the sound of rain, or thumping, or anything at all. I told myself that was a coincidence. Bodies retain heat. Maybe I slept differently on those nights. Curled up, and my own warmth soaked into the floor somehow. It sounds stupid now. It sounded almost plausible then. At 6 a.m., half asleep, coffee in hand, needing very badly for the world to make sense. The hole is what changed things. I found it on a Tuesday. I was on the floor doing the deeply unglamorous task of looking for an earring I'd dropped. Phone flashlight in hand, cheek nearly against the hardwood, when the light caught something under the bed frame that didn't look like dust or shadow. A hole. Small, maybe the width of a pencil. A little more drilled clean through the floorboard. At an angle. Right beneath where my pillow sat. I stopped breathing for a second. I actually remember that. The specific sensation of forgetting to breathe. My first thought, again, was some boring explanation. An old nail hole. Termite damage. Did termites make round holes like that? I didn't even know. I just needed it to be something I already had a category for. I told myself an electrician or a plumber must have drilled it years ago, running some wire or pipe that had long since been removed, leaving this one clean little tunnel behind. I put my finger near it. Not in it, near it. And I felt something I still, to this day, cannot fully explain away as imagination. Air. A very faint draft. Cool. Coming up through that hole. Like the space below wasn't sealed at all. Like it was open. Connected to something. Breathing along with the house. I got up off that floor fast. I remember standing in the middle of my bedroom, staring down at the exact spot under where my head would be every single night. And thinking, for the first time with any real seriousness, someone drilled that. Not decades ago. Recently. The wood around the hole was pale, raw, not weathered like the rest of the floor. I told myself I'd ask the landlord's guy about it when he finally came for the rats. I did not, yet. Let myself think about what a hole positioned exactly under my pillow. Angled slightly upward, might actually be for. The rat guy came on a Thursday, 3 weeks into the rain. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of easy confidence that made me feel a little better just having him in the house. He walked the perimeter outside first, boots sinking into the mud, poking at that low spot near the corner with a stick like he was reading the ground. Yeah, you've got some serious saturation happening under there, he said, crouching by the plywood hatch I'd noticed weeks earlier. Ground's basically given up holding water. This panel's not even latched anymore. Look. He lifted it partway. Just a few inches, enough for a slice of black space to show underneath the house. And a smell drifted out wet earth, and something else under it. Something closer to a locker room than a basement. He wrinkled his nose. Standing water down there, probably. That'll bring rodents for sure. I'll set some traps. But honestly, you want someone to actually go under and look. Make sure nothing structural's happening. Can you look now? He glanced at the sky, then at his watch, then at the hatch. Not today. Ground's too soft. And there's no light down there worth a damn without proper gear. I'll flag it for the landlord, for now. Traps'll handle the rats at least. He set 5 of them, tucked into corners of my kitchen and the hallway closet. baited with peanut butter, and left with a promise that someone would deal with the crawl space soon. I've thought about that word a lot since. Soon, like everyone in this story kept agreeing something needed to happen, and then quietly deciding it could wait one more day. That night, none of the traps went off. I checked them obsessively before bed, like a woman doing a final perimeter sweep, which looking back is exactly what I was doing, just for the wrong threat. I fell asleep faster than I had in days, comforted by the idea that a professional had looked at my problem and given it a name. Rats, saturation, standing water, all words with solutions. I woke up at 2:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I looked directly at my phone to the sound of the scratching again. But it was different this time. Not random. Not the scurry of an animal. It was slow, deliberate, a soft drag. Pause, drag, pause, moving along the floor beneath me in a rough line. From the foot of my bed toward the head, toward the hole. I lay perfectly still, telling myself, rats don't move like that. Rats don't pause like that. And some other, quieter part of my brain answering back. I know. The dragging stopped directly beneath where my pillow lay. And then, nothing. No more sound, just the rain and my own pulse, loud in my ears, and the horrible, specific awareness of exactly how close the floor was to my face. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. When I finally worked up the nerve to turn on my phone flashlight and look at the hole from a distance without getting close, it looked the same as it always had, small, dark, silent. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself that 3 more times before I finally fell back asleep. And every one of those times, I believed it a little less. I want to explain something about fear, because I think people who haven't lived through something like this assume it happens all at once. One big scare, and then you run. That's not how it works. It's erosion. Small pieces chipped away, night after night, until one day you look up and realize you've been standing on almost nothing for weeks. By the start of the 4th week, I'd started sleeping with the light on. I told myself it was because of the rats, so I could see if one ran across the floor. That was the lie I gave myself. And it was thin enough that I never fully believed it, even as I said it in my own head. The warm patch on the floor had gotten smaller, more precise. It wasn't a general area anymore. It was almost exactly the width of a body, running along that same stretch from the foot of the bed to somewhere near the pillow. I'd lie awake sometimes, staring at the ceiling, and think about the layout of my own bedroom the way you'd think about a floor plan you were seeing for the first time. Where the bed was, where the closet was, where that hole sat, angled up, toward the exact spot where my head landed every night. I started changing small things without fully admitting why. I moved my pillow to the opposite end of the bed one night. Told myself it was because the streetlight outside was too bright on that side. I woke up with the warm patch on the new side too, right under where my head now was. That's the night I stopped sleeping in that bed at all. Though I didn't say that to myself directly. I told myself I was trying the couch for a change, like it was some kind of lifestyle experiment. I brought a blanket to the living room and slept or didn't really sleep. More like existed with my eyes closed on a couch that faced the front door. The thumping followed me there too, but fainter, more distant, coming from somewhere further under the house, toward the bedroom. Almost like whatever it was hadn't realized yet that I'd moved, or like it didn't need to be exactly beneath me to know where I was. I called my sister that week, not to tell her everything. I don't know why I held so much back. Maybe because saying it out loud made it sound insane, even to me. But I mentioned the rats. The hole, casually. The way you complain about an annoying landlord. "You should just leave," she said, half joking. "Sounds like a horror movie." I laughed it off. It's an old rental. Everything's dramatic when you're renting somewhere new. But that night, lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, I let myself think. For the very first time. The thought I'd been keeping just out of reach for 3 weeks. What if it isn't rats? What if something down there is bigger than that? I didn't finish the thought. I made myself stop right there, because finishing it meant admitting I needed to do something about it. And I still got. Even after everything, I still wasn't ready to be the woman who overreacted over a noisy old house. The break came on a Tuesday, and it came from the most ordinary place, possible laundry. I was folding clothes on my bed back in the bedroom during the day, because daylight made everything feel manageable again, the way it always does, and I bent down to grab a sock that had fallen near the foot of the bed. That's when I saw it. From an angle I'd never looked at before. Low, almost floor level. The hole wasn't just a hole anymore. Someone had widened it. Not by much, maybe from pencil width to something closer to a finger. A deliberate, careful enlargement. The wood shaved back in small, even strokes like it had been done slowly, over multiple nights, with something sharp and patient. My whole body went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. I didn't touch it. I didn't get close. I backed out of that room, got my phone, and I did something I probably should have done 3 weeks earlier. I looked up hole in floor, plus every panicked variation I could think of. Hunched over my phone in the hallway like I was hiding from the bedroom itself. What I found didn't help. Voyeurism cases, peephole cameras. One article about a man found living beneath a family's floorboards for 2 weeks before anyone noticed, watching them through a gap no wider than a coin. I sat with that for a long time, longer than I want to admit. Because once that thought exists in your head, you cannot put it back. Every warm patch on the floor, every thump that stopped exactly when I sat up, every scratch that paused right beneath my pillow, it all rearranged itself into a different shape. And the new shape had a person in it. Not a rat, a person. I made myself walk through the house calmly. That was important to me. Even then, some instinct telling me not to let my face or my body show what I now believed. I checked the locks on every window. I checked the front door, the back door. I stood in my kitchen and looked out at that plywood hatch through the rain-streaked glass, half covered in mud again after another storm. And I thought about how easy it would be for someone to lift it. Slide underneath, replace it exactly as it was. How long would it take to notice? In a yard that already looked like a swamp. If the dirt around a hatch had been disturbed and settled again a dozen times. I didn't call the police that day. I know how that sounds. But I had no proof yet. Nothing but a widened hole and a theory that made me sound unstable even inside my own head. What would I even say? I think someone lives under my house and watches me sleep. I have a hole in my floor and some warm patches to prove it. Instead, I did the only thing that felt like it gave me any control at all. I got my phone, propped it against a book on my dresser, camera angled down at that hole from a distance, and I started recording. Not constantly, just at night. Starting around 10, running until my battery gave out sometime before dawn. I told myself I was building evidence. I didn't let myself think too hard about what I might catch on camera. For 4 nights, the footage showed nothing but a dark hole and the sound of rain. I watched every minute of it the next morning, coffee going cold beside me, scrubbing through hours of grainy nothing, feeling both relieved and unbearably tense. Relieved because there was nothing there. Tense because I knew, somehow, that nothing was temporary. I was right. On the 5th night, the rain came back hard. Not the steady gray drizzle I'd gotten used to. This was the kind of rain that hits the roof like static. A wall of sound so constant, it swallowed everything else. I remember lying on the couch, phone recording in the bedroom down the hall, and thinking, almost gratefully, that at least tonight I wouldn't hear the thumping. The rain was too loud for that. That thought should have scared me more than it did. Too loud for that. As if the noise from the crawl space needed rain to hide behind. As if someone down there was waiting for exactly this kind of night. I fell asleep around midnight. More from exhaustion than any sense of safety. I woke up a little after 3, not to a sound, but to a feeling that specific. primal sense of being looked at that doesn't need evidence to be real. My eyes opened in the dark living room, heart already pounding before my brain had caught up to why. I lay still and listened. Under the rain. Faint, but there if I focused hard enough. I heard it. Not the random dragging from before. A rhythm. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. Matching almost exactly, and I want you to sit with how insane this sounds, because I sat with it for a long time that night, matching the rhythm of my own footsteps. The way I walk through that house every single day. Bedroom to kitchen to living room. Pause at the fridge, pause at the window. It wasn't a rat responding to noise. It was something that knew my patterns and was rehearsing them. I didn't move for almost 20 minutes. When I finally did, I did it slowly, deliberately. The way you'd move if you suspected you were being watched and didn't want to give away that you knew. I went to the bedroom door, not to go in, just close enough to see my phone screen propped on the dresser. Still recording, red light blinking steady in the dark. Whatever was down there had gone quiet again. But I stood in that doorway for a long moment anyway, staring at that small black hole in my bedroom floor. And I felt, with total certainty, something I can't fully explain and have never been able to shake since. It felt like the hole was staring back. I closed the bedroom door as quietly as I could and went back to the couch. I did not sleep again that night. I sat with my knees against my chest, phone in hand, and I started typing out, word for word, everything I would need to tell the police in the morning, because I finally understood something I should have accepted 3 weeks earlier. This was never rats. This was never the house settling. Someone had been living underneath me, and he had been waiting for a night loud enough to move. I called the police at 6:40 a.m. The second there was enough gray daylight outside to make me feel like a person calling about a real crime instead of a woman calling about a nightmare. I didn't tell them everything on the phone. I said I had reason to believe someone might be living in the crawl space beneath my house, that I had video footage, that I hadn't confronted anyone, that I hadn't gone near the access panel. The dispatcher's voice changed the moment I said crawl space and video. She asked me to stay exactly where I was, doors locked, and told me 2 officers were on their way. Those 40 minutes waiting were some of the longest of my life. I sat in my car in the driveway, not the house, engine running, doors locked, watching that mud-caked plywood hatch through the windshield like it might move on its own. When the officers arrived, I showed them the footage on my phone first, the widened hole, the warm patches I described, the timeline I'd written out that morning with times and dates as best I remembered them. One of them, an older officer, went very quiet watching the clip from that 5th night, the one with the scratching that matched my footsteps. He asked me to send it to him directly. They didn't rush the hatch. That surprised me. I think I expected something out of a movie. Officers storming a door. Instead, they were careful, almost slow, one of them circling to check the yard, the position of the hatch, whether there was any other way in or out from under the house. They asked me question after question. How long had I lived there? When did the noises start? Had I ever seen anyone in the yard? Any cars parked nearby that didn't belong? I said no to all of it. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in weeks. A car. An old sedan, parked on the shoulder near the tree line at the edge of my property. There for maybe 2 days back during the 2nd week. Gone before I really registered it as strange. I told them. One of them wrote it down without changing his expression, which somehow scared me more than if he'd reacted. They asked me to do something that took every ounce of nerve I had left. Leave the house through this front door like it was any other morning. Get in my car and drive to the end of the street, like I was heading to work. We want him to think everything's normal, the younger officer said. If someone's down there, we don't want him spooked into running, or worse, staying still and hiding until we clear out. I did it. I walked out my own front door in yesterday's clothes, forced my hands to stop shaking long enough to unlock my car, and drove away from my house without looking back at the hatch, without looking at anything except the wet road in front of me. while 2 armed officers took up position near the edge of my yard. I parked 3 streets over and sat there, engine off, hands pressed flat against my knees to keep them still, and waited for a phone call. It came 19 minutes later. "We found him," the officer said. "You need to come back, and you need to prepare yourself for what we found down there." I didn't go straight home. They asked me to meet them at the station first, which I understand now. But at the time felt like torture, sitting in a hard plastic chair while an officer explained, piece by piece, what they'd pulled out from underneath my house. His name doesn't matter to me anymore. I've made a point of not remembering it, of letting it fall out of my head on purpose. What matters is this: he had been living in that crawl space for 6 weeks. 6. Not since the rain started, since before I even moved in. They found a section under the house he'd made almost livable. Dry, tucked against the foundation on the far side from the hatch. Above where the worst of the flooding pooled, a sleeping bag, a flashlight with the batteries taped in so they wouldn't rattle. Food wrappers, carefully collected, never left loose, like he understood that a smell or a sound could give him away. And a notebook. The officer hesitated before he told me about the notebook, and I understood why the moment he described it. Pages of times, dates, when I left for work, when I came home, when my lights went off at night, when they came back on. Little notes about patterns, quiet mornings, showers around 7. Things so mundane and so intimate at the same time that I felt sick hearing them read back to me in a police station under fluorescent lights. Here's the part I have never fully made peace with. The part that still wakes me up some nights, even now. Years later, in a different state, a different house, with an alarm system and motion lights and a dog that barks at everything. The notebook didn't start the week the hole appeared. It didn't start the week I called about the rats. The first entry, dated and timed in careful handwriting, was from my very first night in that house. Before I'd unpacked a single box, before the rain had even really started. He was already under there when I moved in. The hole in the floor wasn't drilled in some rushed, opportunistic moment weeks into my tenancy. It had been started earlier than that and simply widened slowly, patiently, over time, because he had time, because nobody was coming to check that crawl space, because a landlord who says soon often means never, and a new tenant, alone, in an unfamiliar state, trying not to seem paranoid, is exactly the kind of person a man like that goes looking for. They showed me one more thing, near the end. Something they debated whether to tell me at all. On the SD card from a small camera he'd hidden near that hole, not my phone footage. His there was a single photo, time-stamped the very first night I slept in that house. Before the handprint, before the warmth, before any of it. Me, asleep, taken from below through a hole that, according to the timestamp, had already existed before I ever unpacked my first box. I think about that a lot. Not the 6 weeks, not the notebook, not the sleeping bag, not even the hole itself. I think about how certain I was, that entire first week, that I was simply getting used to a new house, new creaks, new smells, new rain on a new roof. I think about how many of us live in a version of that same certainty right now. In houses and apartments we've decided are safe simply because nothing has happened yet. The rain didn't create what was under my house. It only made it loud enough to move, and quiet enough for me to finally hear. If there's one thing I'd ask you to take from this, it's not to be afraid of crawl spaces or rain or old rentals specifically. It's this: the next time something in your home feels slightly wrong, slightly off, warmer than it should be, quieter than it should be, don't let the desire to seem reasonable talk you out of checking. Somewhere, tonight, in a house that looks completely ordinary from the street, there might be a version of this story still writing itself. One warm floorboard, one small hole, one patient week at a time.